first, and then we'll jump over real quick to the tax meeting, and then back to the organizational. Yeah.
Okay.
And then after all that is done, then we'll go back to the movie.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nate's usually here.
Yeah.
That's good. Wait until 6 o'clock. Yep.
Sooner or later.
I'm calling this Tuesday, January 4th, Huron City School Board meeting to order. We are going to start this evening with the oath of office for our 3 new board members.
And please. Solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as board members for the said Huron City School District, Erie County, Ohio, to the best of your ability, and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuous office and until your successor is chosen and qualified. Answer on due. Those for you.
We are now going to jump over to our Huron City Schools 2023 tax budget hearing. We will start with the roll call.
Mrs. Hartley.
Here.
Mrs. Hinners. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Dr. LaFay?
Here.
Mrs. Mass?
If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Over to Debbie.
This is the tax budget hearing for fiscal year '23. The tax budget is adopted each January for submission to the county auditor, and it's the first part of the initial stages of district-wide budgeting. The submission shows history information for fiscal year '21 and then our current fiscal year '22. And what the County Budget Commission is actually looking for is our fiscal year '23. One of the difficult things about a tax budget that we submit is we are fiscal year, but the county is calendar year. So that is one of the obstacles, if you want to call that, when we prepare tax budgets. This budget also works in conjunction with our 5-year forecast. And then once it's approved by you and submitted to the budget commission, then they send us a certificate of estimated resources for July 1 of 2022, so that as a treasurer, I have the authority to spend funds. Let's see. The county budget commission is made up of the county auditor, the county treasurer, and the county prosecutor. And in our county, we're fortunate that our budget commission is very active, and they do meet with us if we want to. And every year, I make it a point to go and meet with them because it's really nice to talk to them. They have some insight sometimes on new businesses coming into the county, or hey, I heard this scuttlebutt about this business, maybe that's happening there. So it's just nice to have a little bit of conversation with them. So I always make a point of meeting with them. And it's always nice to let them know, yeah, we need the tax money that we're asking for. So now, if you've got your budget in front of you, I kind of want to go through it with you, schedule by schedule, if that's okay. All right.
Please do.
The first couple of pages are basically a synopsis of what we talked about, but let's go to page 5. And this is a chart of the millage that has been passed by Huron City. It also includes the library, Huron Library, because in the state of Ohio, libraries cannot pass millage on their own. It has to go through a school district. So therefore you have that. And you also have the bond retirement library, because the library has bonds that they are paying off. The tax budget, the commission is mainly looking for those funds that get their revenue mostly from taxes. So in Huron City's case, we have our general fund, we have our permanent improvement, we have the school library bond fund, and then the regular library fund. So that's what Schedule 2 is. And you'll see that Schedule 2 is actually 2 pages, because each paragraph, if you will, is one fund. As I talked about before, column 2 is last fiscal year ending June 30th, 21. Column 3 is our current fiscal year, and the columns that the county auditor budget commission is looking at is 4 and 5. And they break it down in 6-month periods, and then they also go another 6 months out just to see how you would be doing. So you can see what we are asking for the general fund for our revenue and taxes, and what we estimate our expenses to be, and it's pretty closely aligned with our 5-year forecast. It might be a little, a few dollars off here and there, but it's pretty close. The second paragraph, if you will, is our permanent improvement fund. Again, the same scenario where it's showing last year's fiscal year, this current, and what we're asking for fiscal year 23. Second page of the Schedule 2 is the Huron Library Bond Retirement Fund. So those bonds that we're paying off on their behalf come out of this fund. And then the fourth paragraph is the agency fund. And you can see on all those columns, it always ends in 0. That is completely a pass-through fund. Whatever money we get from the county auditor goes right back out to them, minus the fees that the auditor collects or charges them for collecting those taxes. I looked up the last principal interest payment just as a bit of trivia for the bond library, and it's 12/1 of 25. So so you'll have this, you'll see them on here until at least then. Schedule 3, because the auditor issues an estimated certificate of resources on July 1, they also need to know about all of our other funds. Because if I didn't include those, then I wouldn't be legally able to pay anything out of those funds. So these are our other funds that we have. Most of our funds are special revenue funds. We have expendable trust funds. A lot of our scholarships are in that category. Agency funds are some 300s and some of the athletic. This is just telling the auditor we have these other funds. They don't really look at the schedule other than to say. And what's interesting, on July 1, as a school treasurer, I am to send the auditor a certificate of available balances as of June 30th. So he turns around and issues a new certificate right away. But the initial one is actually issued like at the end of February. So we have that ready to go. The Schedule 4 is listing all of our debt, and that includes the library that we talked about. We actually have 2 bonds, if you want to call them that. We have the energy conservation bonds. You can see that the final bond payment is 12/1 of 23. And the roof repair science layout, we actually have our last payment next September. We just paid off one this past December, and I was going to look it up, and I forgot what project it was, but we have one we just paid off. So that's always good news. And then Schedule 5, I just included it because it's part of the document. We do not have any tax anticipation notes. So that is the budget that I'm going to send to the county auditor to request the taxes be collected in that manner.
Just really quick, you said it was the county auditor, county prosecutor, and one other entity?
Auditor, prosecutor, and treasurer.
Thank you.
Discussion? And Betty, we're not taking action on this. All right. I need a motion to adjourn the budget hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinner?
Yes.
Dr. LeFay?
Yes.
Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right. So now we are going to jump back to our organizational meeting. Betty, do you need to call the roll again for this?
Like me to?
Sure.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinner?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Dr. LeFay?
Here.
Mrs. Mass?
All right, so we are now going to move to our election of officers, and we need nominations for president of the board.
I'd like to nominate Jody Mast as president of the board.
Second.
Nominations, and then we will vote for president. Okay,
You want to close
Right, I need
nominations and cast a unanimous ballot?
okay,
I
All right.
need a motion for that.
okay. We need a motion to close nominations for
You can close nominations and cast a unanimous
Okay.
ballot. if
That's what we
you
will
so
do.
desire.
We will close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot. And then I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. LeFay?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinner? Mrs. Mass?
Yes. All right. And now we will do the oath of office for president. On then to nominations for vice president. Mr. Jones. Motion to close nominations for a unanimous vote. So moved. Second? All right.
Mrs. Sinners?
Yes.
Dr. LeFay?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right.
Jody, do you want me to? Do you want to?
Oh, no, no, you can. You can. Go ahead. Then move on to our consent agendas. We have the treasurer authorizations.
The items that we are asking for authorizations for the calendar year is the signature of the treasurer or a facsimile of a PDF or a JPOG file for the checks and vouchers. Permission to invest in inactive funds and to pay all bills as they are presented, provided that the funds are available. And we report those monthly to the Board of Ed. Permission for the president and treasurer to request advances or borrow money if needed, to approve workbook prices, request tax advance amounts with the county auditor as needed, apply on behalf of the school district to participate in any federal or state projects, for the treasurer to attend association, local, and state meetings. And remember, this would not just be me, it would be my president. Permission to authorize purchases up to $5,000 for now and then situations. Anything over that would be presented to the board. Is everyone familiar with now and thens?
No.
Okay, what a now and then is. Legally, any expenditure of the board has to have a purchase order written and in place before it is authorized and can be ordered. If it's less than $5,000 and a situation like that occurs where someone maybe didn't get their purchase order in on time and had an emergency purchase, the treasurer can authorize that. But if it's more than $5,000, it has to be approved by the board. And then the last item is to appoint the treasurer as the designee to receive public records training, because by law, as new board members, you must have that training, but you can designate. It normally does go to the treasurer.
Betty, I have a question. On the document I had earlier, there was also the permission to enter into contracts on behalf of the board, terms less than a year and a total of less than $50,000.
That's right above the last one you read.
Oh, did I miss it? Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I did
That's
miss it.
okay. I had a question about that. I didn't know that number seems high to me, and I didn't know if there was maybe a standard, if this has been a longstanding practice in the district.
My understanding is that was something that Mr. Gruyer put in for contracts of $50,000 or less. That would be totally up to you as a board. If you would prefer that most contracts get run through you, you can certainly take that off. I almost do like the limit, though. If the $50,000 bothers you, maybe a lesser amount, or that. When we talk about contracts, we might be talking about, the postage meter contract for $250 for the year. Is that something you really want to approve? So.
No, I was thinking something, certainly having that and recognizing that day-to-day operations, things are going to come up. I'm thinking 50,000, and that was the amount cited for saving money with the cutting busing. And so just being in the financial situation we're in, it might be prudent at this time at least for expenses that would equate to something that does affect potentially student services, if maybe that were something that would come before the board for evaluation.
I think the number used to be 25,000, at least when I was here. It was 25. In between that time, I don't know if it went up, but it was 25 when I was here.
If we wanted to change that number, is that a standalone motion or is it a part of your
Change it
approval?
here, yeah.
Okay.
Do we want to have discussion about that right now before we items under consent agenda?
I think I'd like to have a little time to go back and review why because that has been done since I've been on the board, to see what the reasoning behind that was, rather than just, I think it's just because the cost of everything has gone up, and that the majority of the contracts that he was working with were more than $25,000, so everything was like coming to us.
And I know that, and I do appreciate your explanation of why you're looking at the 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that even though the treasurer had the ability to enter into contracts 50,000 or less, those were always brought before the board for our approval, anyways, just as a courtesy.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't ever, to my knowledge, just approved and done. They were
Mm-hmm.
always brought to the board, and we always approved them, and
If
had
we-
the ability to question.
Excuse me, I
That's
thought you were
okay.
done. If we lowered it and it was a pain for your day to day, we could always go back and raise it, right? I mean, could we just maybe do
Absolutely.
that temporarily and pass so that we could pass it?
Maybe that they changed it to 50,000 because bidding used to be 25
That's
and now
what I
it's
was,
50.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
that could be
To-
because
to have no
I
bid.
honestly don't know.
Yeah.
And that is something that would have to go, we'd have to go back and look at when Mr. Drewier started, and I'm not exactly sure the date that was.
I don't recall either, but I do recall.
And it may have been at one of the January organizational meetings. It could have been then. So, any further discussion? Is everyone okay if Mr. Jones had asked if we could go back and just look as to why that was a procedure? Do we want to do that, or do we want to go ahead and vote to change it to a lesser amount?
I'd be more comfortable getting more reasoning, just because I'd hate to lower it and then turn around and raise it. I mean, it just seems to me that, and then we can have, I think, a better discussion, having something in front of me, because there might be just a real good reason. Maybe the number of contracts we're talking about overall doesn't matter, so.
Right.
Why don't we take that off? I can help or I'll do some history and put it on the agenda for February.
Perfect.
If that's what,
Do you need some authority though or not?
not right. I can't think of any contracts right now.
Okay.
Yeah, for the next couple weeks.
Okay, great. All right. We will move on then to the superintendent authorizations.
Very similar. I'll go through the list as Betty went through the treasurer's list. Permission to attend association, local and state meetings. Permission to serve as purchasing agent for the school district. Permission to the superintendent to enter into contracts on behalf of the board that have terms of 1 year less than total value of 50,000 or less. Permission to approve meeting attendance, travel requests, and reimbursements as deemed appropriate. Permission for the superintendent or designee to serve as sexual harassment grievance officer. Permission to employ such temporary personnel as needed for emergency situations, such employment to be presented for approval by the board at the next regular meeting. Permission to accept resignations. Such resignations are to be presented for approval by the board at the next regular meeting. Designation of the superintendent as board hearing officer to represent the board during student discipline situations. The superintendent will serve as the board designee to coordinate and conduct suspension, expulsion hearings, and appeals on the board's behalf. Declare the purchase of meals and other refreshments at meetings be authorized as permissible use of funds, and to authorize the superintendent and/or treasurer to determine appropriateness. Authorize the superintendent to consult legal counsel as deemed necessary. Authorize the superintendent to enter into tuition contracts for special education and regular education students with other school districts and providers, and to authorize superintendent to make assignments to committees of the superintendent.
Questions and discussion on the superintendent authorizations?
I had a question on the Title IX. Sure. Is that typical, John, that the superintendent is designated as a grievance officer in other school districts?
That I don't know, but I'll look into. I know Mark Dowdy is a Title IX coordinator, and then we all have roles, but it's the case.
And I
But
do,
I can certainly find
yeah,
out.
I do believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that is new as of
That and the
last.
updated,
That's the updated, that's
I
new.
think you're right.
Because there was some question as to that last year.
Yeah.
So that's new. I guess my question would be, if the superintendent is not serving as the sexual harassment grievance officer, who would then? Who would that next person
Well,
be?
you'd probably designate an administrator, but you know, a lot of those administrators, like, so we have people designated in the Title IX area, for example, you know, Mrs. McDonald is the decision maker, we have investigators. So we would, you know, it depends on the size of your district too, we only have so many administrators to do that. So, but it would have to be someone in an administrative position. And truthfully, I don't know if you could, I don't know, I know that at North Point, that's not a service that we provide to districts. Even though we would if they needed someone to fill in and it was approved by the board. Sometimes we've done that through the ESCs. They'll ask us to come in. I've done that for other districts, not necessarily in Title IX, but I did a expulsion hearing for a district because of a conflict, and another disciplinary type hearing. So there's other methods, but to your question specifically, I don't know if the other superintendents do that.
What does the role entail? In other words, if we've got a decision maker, we've got an investigator, we've got a coordinator, how many people do we need? I mean, I know we're under the Title IX guidelines, I understand that. But
Well,
what do you do? What would you do?
I think in any of those proceedings, there's always got to be some kind of a method. If there's a grievance, or if there's somebody deems somebody has done something wrong in the process, there has to be somebody there to do that.
If I understand it, it's almost like kind of like a mini judge, right? You're just your turn. You understand the rules and make sure that they're being followed.
So this could be an independent person. I mean, it
That's
could
what
be
I'm
Lloyd.
wondering.
It could be, yeah. It's similar to, you know, if you have a grievance process with one of the unions, the process is, you know, a grievance isn't if you don't like something the supervisor did. It's an alleged violation of the negotiated agreement. And that's, you know, again, I go to my building principal experience, that, you know, that person would come to me as the grievance officer. It's their hearing. I would listen, and then, you know, per contract, give my decision in writing. It's a similar process. There has to be recourse for this, for a grievance, if something were to come up during the process, if someone felt that the process was violated. For example, I guess if the investigator was biased or inappropriate in some way.
Or if the role of the superintendent is best, given your obligations to the board and the district, is best positioned then to serve as what is effectively a neutral, I think, or somebody that's a procedural neutral. Although there will be, I think, substantive decisions that they can make regarding what type of evidence is allowed in a hearing, and just like a judge would, or an arbitrator.
Yeah.
So I do have some concerns with, and it's not, there's no specific, right? Because we haven't actually had this process play
Exactly.
out chances are with the new administration, this process will be revised. But for the time being, it just seems like maybe it's something we ought to dig into a little bit more and see what a best practice is.
Same thing kind of we're doing with the treasurer and the $50,000. It's very easy for me to send out some emails and make some calls and, find out how they, I don't know if the other districts are even this deep into it. They probably are. It's new, but sure, I'll ask around and have some information for you. No problem.
Any other discussion regarding the superintendent authorizations? We will move on to the establishment of Records Commission. Go ahead.
The Records Commission is made up of the Board of Education President, the Treasurer of the Board of Education, and the Superintendent. And then they're supposed to meet annual records retention schedule that may have changed and or records being requested to be disposed of.
To the OSBA annual membership.
That membership is calendar year. I didn't have a amount because they haven't sent us their invoice yet.
Okay.
But last year it was $5,027.
Okay. And then our OSBA legal assistance fund. And we need to appoint an OSBA legislative representative. Does that have to have a nomination or someone? Is there anyone who would be interested in being the OSBA legislative representative?
I would be.
Okay.
I mean, I was this.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. And then we have the establishment of service fund.
That particular fund is for expenses when you as board members have those all taken out of that fund.
Authorization to engage legal counsel. Oh, I'm sorry. Authorization to purchase performance bonds.
This is an annual resolution for performance bonds for it's the superintendent, the treasurer, and usually the board president. And the treasurer is not a position bond, but the other two are.
Now, approval to engage legal counsel. Authorization.
Two firms that we use, Bricker and Eckler and Dinsmore and Scholl. Those don't pay a retainer fee. We only pay them as we use them.
And are there, of those two legal firms that you mentioned, are they both for the same purposes, or is one financial, is one,
One's
school?
Dane in.
Dane is Bricker and Eckler.
Okay.
Okay.
Each one has their own expertise.
Okay.
So depending on what the issue is would be why we would particularly call one firm over the other and whether that particular lawyer in that firm handles those situations.
It's pretty common for districts to use more than one firm.
Is more like what area of expertise? I get Bricker and Eckler is more general.
I honestly don't know because I've only seen the invoices lately for clearance.
What they'll do is Dane Gashin is the general counsel, so we run everything through him, and he does negotiating contracts mainly. And if you get into something a little deeper, for example, Title IX, he will refer us to their Title IX attorney who handles the majority of those things. If we get into something special education related in terms of litigation, it is likely that Dane would refer us to someone in the firm that expertise lies in the area of special education. Within Bricker and Eckler.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Understood.
Yeah.
My question is, what do we use Dinsmore and Scholl for?
Oh, that I don't know.
I don't know either.
I thought maybe they were more financial. And I don't know. I don't have any contact for them, and I've never used anyone, you know, in the 6 months I've been here other than Bricker Eckler.
You don't pay any retainer fee for the Dinsmore firm.
So, I take it we as a board don't have much dealing with them. Would there be a reason that we would want to research other, like, I mean, I don't know. I know there are other firms out there because I attend in Toledo some of their
Yeah.
workshops.
You know, and there's always a reason. I guess it depends. It's more of a situation. For example, I know that, and again, I can only go by my experience, but when I got here, we used Pebble and Wagner for a long time. And then it was decided, actually, we had 3 new board members elected, Donna and Scott and Joy Hillman, and they decided to go with Bricker and Eckler. They, you know, just based on, there was, at the time in the district, that was when we were near strike, and there was some real tough grievance and things going on there. So there was, you know, there was some emotion involved in that. And so it was decided to change firms. Now at North Point, you know, there's certain individuals we use for, let's say, litigation. There's other firms we use for professional development, and yet even though it's changed, there was a firm we would use for special education, because that's a lot of what we do over there. So again, it's more situational. Right now, in my mind, Bricker and Eckler is fine, but the board always can entertain other firms and vote to, you know, use as many as you'd like and who you'd like. That's you know, certainly the board's prerogative.
Do you know when we made that change, and maybe nobody here does, when we made the change between the firms, was that done through like a request for proposal, an RFP process, or was it just somebody knew somebody and we moved over?
That was done. That was done because there was animosity when the 3 new board members came in about the negotiations, which Pebble and Wagner handled, and so that was as you guys had things that you ran on, and the people are counting on you to bring now to the board. That was a big thing with the new board members back then, was to get rid of Pebble and Wagner. And so, I mean, I can give you a little more history if you want.
Well, I'm less concerned with that
Yeah.
than I am with the choose, like how you select your new vendor.
Yeah, you know,
right? I mean, I
and
don't.
from my understanding, it was one of the new board members that just her husband was an attorney, and I believe that's how. And Bricker and Eckler, I think, is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest school law firms in the state. And you know, they're a pretty well known brand, so they went that route.
There a desire to look further into legal counsel to look to change, or are we going to leave it as is?
The contract that we sign with them, aside from not having a retainer, it can be, we can.
I guess
I'm a little concerned about, you know, here. Because that's, I mean, that's an expensive, I come from Cincinnati legal, I mean, that's an expensive, like, high tier law firm. I'm surprised
and
to
Eckler?
see them.
Oh,
Dinsmore
okay, yeah.
Shoals.
Right.
I mean, I'm surprised to see them,
Yeah.
a public entity.
I know.
using
Again,
them.
my first time here, I've never heard of them until, you know, here. So
Put it out of Cincinnati.
Well, if
yeah.
till we approve it, I think we should know
Yeah, I mean, I guess
why we're approving them.
figure out what we have used them for in the past, and if we don't need to use them, do we need to do anything? Do we need to send any kind of letter to them? We just okay, great, all right.
Do we need to pull that from the consent agenda now?
Yeah, you can pull that firm, might as well.
All right,
You don't have to motion that. You just,
okay.
okay.
All right, and then our last line under this is approved board meeting schedule for 2022.
No, you switched
Oh, did I?
over my,
Oh, no, approved board liaisons.
Yeah.
But we haven't established those yet.
We looked at renaming
Yeah.
that, so I think we can, if it's okay with everyone, we can pull it for the time being,
Yeah.
and that's something that can be
Yeah.
easily worked out through emails and things, and ready to go. And you know, the truth of the matter is through communication. Until we do that, any concern or liaison that anybody would like to participate in, you know, please feel free. So.
Right. And then the board meeting schedule for 2022.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt. John, won't the Hovey representative need to be picked?
Yeah, that will need to be done.
That one will need-
'cause we-
And so
yes.
will Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Parks and Rec and Ehovie are,
So
the
we can
two
just, yeah,
that
pull
will
some
need-
stuff off there.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I mean, and we can even pull that item off until I mean, that's on our agenda is to do, board liaisons this evening, isn't it?
yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean,
Move it to the agenda.
we can move it
To the next
to
board
the
meeting
board
tonight.
meeting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. So that's the Holy and all that will be at the,
Right.
With the meeting dates, when Mrs. Mass and I went over the agenda yesterday, I didn't have dates in there. So there'd been some talk about work sessions and things. I think that's something that needs a little bit more discussion because of you know, 2 meetings a month. Not that we all don't want to do that, but that's a lot. There's an expense that goes along with that. We can throw in work sessions anytime, so we thought that we would just do the typical third Tuesday dates of every year. We did move, and I had Luann Bold. If you'd notice, the 3 meetings in June, July, and August, they used to be at 8 a.m. in the morning. Based on feedback from all of you, we moved them, so every time is at 6 in the evening now. And again, you know, any of these dates can be changed, times can be changed if something comes up, but this is just the basic third Tuesday of every month board meeting.
John and I had talked about having the 2 meetings scheduled, and just with what we're looking at the beginning of this, you know, January, February, March, April, we're gonna have a lot of meetings. You know, we're gonna have treasurer meetings, we're gonna have superintendent interviews. So I think to move ahead now, it would be best to not put those second meetings in writing, because we have to all be able to participate, and some of those dates aren't gonna work for everybody, and it just seemed better to just leave the third Tuesday and go with that, and we're gonna obviously be adding a lot more meetings.
I guess my thought process was more of, I would rather have it on my calendar than do what we normally do and say, oh, can we meet on Tuesday? No, we can do it on Thursday. No, we can do it on Wednesday. And if it's in place, then those are our meetings, and you can always cancel meeting dates. But we met 23 times in 2021. So it's not really adding, it's just setting more, and I don't know how the rest of you, but on the other boards and everything I'm involved in, it becomes difficult sometimes for me to like decide tonight that we're going to meet later this week. I mean, that's the only reason I was proposing more of a set schedule. To me, it would make it easier for everybody, and then cancel it if we don't need it. That's just my opinion.
I guess I'm just thinking of the second meeting, you know, when we're interviewing people for treasurer, superintendent, all of the interviewees aren't always going to be able to make that second meeting date.
True.
So I guess I completely understand what you're saying.
It's just we have so much going on, and that it seems like if we can approve things every other week, it also helps administration with moving on contracts or whatever, and having something sit a month also to wait for our approval. Nobody's complaining about that. I'm not asserting that.
Sure. Other perspectives on that?
I have to say personally, it helps when I can plan. This is a little abrupt. I like to say I have every other Tuesday open from now for the next couple months, but we could try putting them on the calendar for now, and then if we're having a lot of conflicts, you know, scrap it and go to ad lib.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and I think from the community standpoint, if we can get some sort of social media will probably pop up every now and then, unavoidably, but if we can try and create a rhythm that may be useful to the community as well.
And on the interview weeks, maybe we could cancel our regularly scheduled meeting and just make it special for when people can, the interviewees can make it. We could trial it for a little bit.
We can try it, absolutely. Absolutely.
If you want, we could vote on these dates and then, create the new dates on the agenda and the next meeting vote on those.
Yeah, sure.
We're ready. We need a motion to, we need an emotion to approve the consent agenda with the changes that have been made.
So moved.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LeFay, Mrs. Henners, Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next is our tax budget approval for fiscal year 23 tax budget that we had the meeting for earlier. Need a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? Okay.
Mrs. Jones, yes. Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LeFay,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes.
Motion passed.
I need a motion now to adjourn our organizational meeting.
So moved. Yes.
Mrs. Hare, Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Dr. LeFay, Mrs. Mack.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. All right, we will now move into our regularly scheduled board meeting for January 4th.
Mrs. Hartley,
Here.
Mrs. Harris, Mr. Jones.
Here.
Dr. LeFay,
Here.
Mrs. Mack.
Here. Thank you. We need to approve the agenda for this evening.
Change of moving the board liaisons. Okay.
Yes.
Motion.
Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. And then, since we've already said the Pledge of Allegiance, I don't believe we need to do that again. We need an approve the minutes from our December meeting. That would probably be just you and I, correct?
Oh, that, I guess technically.
Yeah, so,
I need one more yes.
yeah, so,
I mean, her approval.
yes,
I was present.
okay, okay, so moved.
Mrs. Mack,
Yes.
Mrs. Harris, yes. Mrs. Hartley,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Dr. LeFay. Motion passed.
We now move into our audience community participation portion of our board meeting. The audience and community participants are reminded to state their name, address, and area of concern. And as a reminder, participants are limited to 5 minutes, and we do limit the entire community participation time to a total of 30 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this time?
My name is William Biddlecombe, 1228 Brookview Drive in Huron. I'm here on behalf of City Council. I'm newly elected, and pending my official nomination, I will be the liaison to the school board.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else who has anything they'd like to bring before the board this evening?
Tim Sawicki, 346 Ohio Street. First of all, congratulations to the 3 new members for your successful campaign. You've got a lot of work ahead of you. John, you'll be gone. Betty, you'll be gone. And you folks will have to figure that out. So good luck. The area I would like to bring to your attention, though, is something that's literally near and dear to my heart, and that is the physical condition over at McCormick School. I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about McCormick as an educational facility and how that's all going to fit in with the grades and everything else. But in the meantime, the building is literally, and again, very much showing its age. And I don't want that to get lost in the discussion about the facility as an educational facility. Because regardless of what you decide to do eventually with the students, you're going to have a very valuable community asset to maintain. And that hasn't been done as it should be most recently. And I know dollars are scarce, and that's hard to do. But as you make those decisions and as you move forward, please keep in mind that that is a valuable community asset and needs to be maintained, needs to be looked at critically as far as its exterior in particular. I'm not aware of the interior situation. It may be equally bad. I don't know. But that's what I just wanted to bring to your attention, because I know you're going to be very busy and you're going to be having to make major decisions about students, where they're going, how they're going, who's teaching, what's going on, and be very easy to overlook that critical or crucial community asset and make sure that it's maintained, because it's in need of some repair as we speak, or as I speak. So I would appreciate if you would put that in the back of your minds and keep that in mind as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that has anything they'd like to speak to the board this evening? We will move on to the superintendent report.
As you can see, there's nothing at the time we published this included in there, but I did, and I brought up, I do want to talk a little bit about the COVID situation in the district. That was the discussion among the Erie County superintendents prior to us returning to school based on the spike. I put together quickly from the principal's emails. It's nothing fancy, but what I like to do is I like to track our attendance on a daily basis. And Chad Carter created a spreadsheet that we post totals on that you guys, the new board members, it's a Google Doc, so we'll give you permission to look at it and you can see our numbers. But I wanted to just, since today is Tuesday, just give you a little sample of where we're at right now. Right now, our total cases in the 4 buildings is 12 that we know of. And compared to, let's say, Vermillion, Margaretta, Sandusky, that's relatively low. But if you look at our data on a week-to-week basis, that's a little high. We're going to continue to track this. Right now, it's the staffing absences that are the problems in the districts. Obviously, student absences are of concern, but Vermillion's situation where they closed for a week is due to staffing. We had a meeting today, kind of quickly, a Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock of all the Erie County superintendents to discuss our situations, and it's nice because we have a good group and a good rapport, and we do like to stay together and know what's going on. And Margaretta is, for example, right now they're staffing wise, they're at that limit when they're close to maybe having to make some tough decisions. Us, Edison, not so much. Sandusky's really pushed to the limit right now, and we don't we can't predict what the next couple days or weeks are going to decide. Our discussion today was, we feel like probably the next 2 to 5 weeks are really crucial. And then, of course, the thing that sometimes gets lost in our procedural discussions is, if you do have to close, what are the kids missing? We've talked about that since this started, is those educational gaps, and that's always, just know that's always part of our conversation as well. Another thing that we've wrestled with is we have gotten a guidance sheet from the Erie County Health Department on the new COVID, the restrictions on if you actually have COVID, and then if you've been exposed. There is another guidance sheet that the Ohio Department of Health sent out that our school nurse likes better than the Erie County sheet. And then you have the CDC, which has, all three of them are different in some ways. This has created a degree of confusion. Now, throw in the policy of masks to stay, test to play. That's a whole other policy that applies only if contacts are made inside the school environment or school functions. And so what you have, and what the state, I think, has realized is a lot of confusion over what way are we going to go. We had it today at Woodlands. And again, I'm not faulting anyone or throwing anyone under the bus, but the nurse, there was a positive that was in school, and Mr. Dowdy had established the close contacts by mask to stay. They should have been able, if they masked, to stay, and the nurse called the parents and said they have to stay home for 5 days. So there's a lot of fog of information going on, and we're trying to straighten that out because we need to get something out to the parents, excuse me, reaffirming our policy, and to tell them, the new policy of 5 days in isolation if you have it, that's pretty cut and dry. Where it gets complicated is the close contacts, because now you're matching up what vaccine they had, when they had it, if they had it, and then it's determining things. So this is, again, creating what could potentially be confusion. It's our understanding that the state is meeting because they know everybody's confused, and they're going to try to get on the same page and a little more focused. But we also think other things are going to change in another week or two. So, excuse me. I don't know. We just heard that in our superintendent's meeting today, Tom Roth had heard that there's other changes going on at the state, but nobody knows really the specifics of it. It's just that third-hand information that you hear.
PCR tests aren't approved anymore as of December 31st, so that's a major change coming through.
And Mrs. Hartley shared with me, which I really like, is we're arguing as administrative team, do we like the Erie County one? Do we like the state one? Bexley, they just took the information and did their own. They took the stuff and what is acceptable, and they put it out in their own. It's the formatting of it and the presentation that we, you have to be careful of. Because if I just sent everything I have here to parents, it's like white noise. So really it's that. So that's where we're at right now. We'll have some communications going out. You guys will see all that stuff before it goes out. So it is definitely a work in progress.
Can you speak to our situation with subs? My understanding is not just for us, but districts regionally, if not across the state, are dealing with a shortage of subs that are available. So that's also impacting what's happening in the classroom. I understand principals are being pulled into, which is remarkable, and I'm so grateful for that. Can you talk a little bit about where we are with subs?
Happy to do that. Comparative to other districts, we're actually not in a bad place. We're not as good as we want to be, but we have in our district a lot of our local community that subs and pitches in. And, when they go through, a lot of the districts use WIXI services for sub placement, but most of our people just want to work in Huron. So in that regard, that's a good thing for us. I know not all of you were at last meeting, but the board did pass that resolution only for the school year, where now someone with a high school. So there's the potential for WIXI to get us more. The other area that I feel like we're very fortunate in is the area of busing and maintenance. because our maintenance guys, mostly all of them, can also drive a bus. Steve Zek can drive a bus. Rick Gadd can drive a bus. Our new guy, Mark Craig, can drive a bus. So that helps. Now, being able to move those pieces around is a great thing to keep the district open. But what we are noticing is they're not doing their jobs. They're not having the time to do the jobs that they're hired to do. You know, when we put maintenance guys on buses, we're prioritizing it, but maintenance is going undone. You know, when principals are in classrooms, we're keeping those classrooms open, but you know, their functions, maybe, you know, I've had some calls where parents have been a little upset, little lag time and some follow up on some issues. Well, the reality was they were in the classroom for a couple days, and so it hurts, you know, to be doing that. I guess it's a glass half full, glass half empty scenario. You know, we're better than most, but again, I think, you know, like anything else, we'll feel some long-term effects down the road if this is constantly going on, and I don't really see the end of it this year. So that's where we're at. Other districts, yeah, they're struggling for subs too.
So is your plan to send out a follow-up communication then, based on, really just talking about the guidance, since there is a lot of confusion? I see other
Yes,
districts
really
doing that
based on,
right
you know,
now, but.
we had a conversation today, myself and Mrs. Hartley, and then, like I said, we know we have to do it, and you know, we weren't arguing, but we were debating over which way to go. But the document you sent gives us another option. That's what I like in particular, is just creating our own. Again, it's the formatting of it and the presentation. The information we can plug in. We just want to send something that's a coherent, concise, easy to understand document. We will be doing it.
I think, you know, going on 2 years of this for families and the upheaval for students and for families, not to mention the staff, any surety we can give them and assurances that we acknowledge that we are committed to keeping schools open, to keeping students in-person learning, because we all agree that that's the best outcome and that's what we desire.
That was a big
So
topic
those
today.
assurances, yeah, for those parents, and then the guidance of try to make it as clear as possible what to expect. If there's a contact at school, if there's a positive diagnosis, what does that mean for your child? And how will the school help accommodate, especially if the students are out sick, if you expect that there's going to be a lot of students out sick. I saw some parents asking those questions of, they can't participate online, what are they doing? If they're sick, they need to be getting well. But the concerns about missing schoolwork and that kind of thing.
Big, like you said, the big commitment of all the superintendents in the county is being in person, kids in school, keeping that staff in front. I would think that like we brought up today, the potential for the voids of kids that are sick and miss a lot of school, that's going to be something that we're going to begin to talk about more, because it's that time of the year to do that, to look at and plan for the summer. You know, when I got here in July, for example, we had in the district a very successful summer of summer remediation and a lot of the programs that were going on. And I'm speaking, it was all over, but you know, I was here in this building, and we really did, compared to other districts, a good job. So that type of planning will be going on and communicated to all those things. It's just, like I said, it's the presentation, because believe it or not, every once in a while you do get someone who tells you, Luann was on a bus one time and a parent said, you know, I really get tired of all that stuff you said. I don't want to see it anymore, you know. So we want to be a little careful of, like I said, it's all in the presentation and making it concise and understandable. And we want to make sure we're accurate. We don't, none of us have any problem like today. If we're wrong on like with the quarantine, it wouldn't, you know, we're going to say, look, we're wrong. This stuff can happen. We're going to call and make it right. You know, and we did, Mark. Call. This will be an ongoing discussion that we'll all have, I'm sure, moving forward quite a bit.
Last point is, I know it's been brought up before about potentially putting a dashboard on the website just to be able to share that information. If it is something that's being shared internally with the school, would that be a possibility? I've heard from parents who would appreciate just knowing what is it looking like in the school environment. And it doesn't have to even get as detailed as building breakdowns or anything like that. They just have said, you know, it would be nice to say, like, what's the situation like this week? How many new cases are there between students and staff? And then maybe cumulative or something like that, just for a point of reference.
Yeah, that's come up. I've been a little, to be honest with you, reluctant to do that because I feel like our community, as I've said many times, has done a great job of keeping kids home when they're sick. And there's that part of me that I don't know how the dashboard would obviously be accurate in terms of what our knowledge is. I don't know how accurate it is in terms of, you know, who has COVID and who's out. You know, if someone is keeping their child home, they don't have to tell us why. They just tell us that it's home. So there's that part of me that if you can't make it accurate, and we've talked about this in our superintendent's meetings in the county too, and it's the same. There's some that do it and some that don't. I don't know. Sometimes you get to the point where it's like, you know that everything you're going to do is going to be partially wrong in some people's eyes. But I haven't thought a lot about the dashboard. Anything's possible, sure. But at this point, I don't know if we'll revisit that or not.
What's discussion? Whatever it's worth, I would love to see the dashboard reborn. I think it was helpful to parents when we were in the beginning throes of COVID in 2020, just to be able to go on the school website, see what's going on. You know, just for whatever it's worth, I would be in favor of that, but wanted to throw that out there.
I appreciate your point that we're only as good as the information. Based on information reported to the schools. And I think folks understand that there's an honor system that underlies.
And I think, you know, that's a point we talked about too. Trust was the word we used with some of these new parameters, because there has to be a trust that, you know, we don't obviously we don't require vaccines, but we have to know that parents know that they have scenario based on what they know, you know, about their child, and we don't want to be too intrusive on that. You know, this is really small because I printed it up, but this is Chad's creation, and it's real small. You guys will have access to this, but this is, you know, definitely a possibility of something if we want to put up some numbers so that, you know, people can see, you know, where we're at and what we're doing. I'll pass it around. I have a hard time. I just kind of did it for my own knowledge. Certainly, if we posted it, it would be a lot more legible. So that gives you a little breakdown, though. And that could be something, again, with a disclaimer. You know.
Is there, and one of the questions I've gotten is, you know, with the remote capacity, and especially a lot of the investments we've made in the classrooms over the last year, is there, and I don't know what the educational requirements are, but let's say my kids quarantine for 5 days because they test positive. Is there a way for them to attend classes remotely rather than just be fully out of the classroom and out of instruction?
Yes. 7 through 12, they have their Chromebooks. So in that, they can be very attuned to what's going on in the classroom through that Chromebook. As far as a remote, like a broadcast or something in a Zoom thing, we have that capability. We haven't used it. We've talked about it in our organizational sense. Again, talking today, every single superintendent wants to go in school in front of people till you can't. We always figured that if we have to do the remote thing, but our thinking was more broad, not specific.
Right.
We would need probably a calamity day to organize it if we thought we were going to be out for a while, and then switch to that platform. Some teachers do the remote thing, but we don't have, you know, a blanket policy or practice across the district for that.
Just for clarity's sake, I'm not talking about the days where the whole school's all remote.
Right.
I'm talking about specific kids allowing them access to instruction remotely if they're unable to physically attend school because of, say, a quarantine or anything. They have the flu for a couple of days, but they're well enough to listen to the algebra, instructions for the day, that sort of.
And again, I think it's more informal based on the Chromebook and the individual teacher right now. What I do foresee happening is we've learned a lot from this pandemic about that kind of remote learning. We always struggled. I go back to my days as a building principal with those students that had to miss schools for long-term medical things. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but I think down the road as we don't have to spend so much time on the pandemic and we can get back to focusing on education, we'll have found that we have more tools through technology to do just that. And probably sadly for future generations, the snow day could be a thing of the past. Because if you think about it, if you go that route, you might have the capability to never have a calamity day again. So it's evolving and it's going on. Is it going on as much as we would like? The answer is probably no. Is it going on blanket, across the district? No, but many are doing that. Well, and again, it depends on, if you're in high school, it's way different than it would look like for more informal right now than a canned policy and practice that we have.
Last year where they voted that, I thought you guys voted that the quarantined kids were allowed to access remote, but because remote's not fully functional anymore, they're not doing that.
We did, but Julie, can you speak to that for us? Thank you.
So just really quickly, my understanding is you're maybe from the state level down, but regardless, somehow a compilation of those guidelines is going to occur. So
Yeah, the new guidelines, correct, for isolation.
Okay, and that's likely going to come from the state level now,
Well,
or do we get to decide our own document? And if so, who gets to have input in that?
there's not a whole lot of differences between them, and much of it is just, some of it's just, I think one document calls for a 5-day versus a 10-day if you're unvaccinated, and then I made a note in the Erie County document, they would like to see after 5 days, they put testing if possible, and then the state document is more testing. So they're throwing in little, phrases, and I don't know why they're not on the same page. And then you go back to that whole mask to stay, test to play. Then we wouldn't, if a person agrees to wear the mask for the 5 days, you wouldn't be quarantining anybody anymore, which is, us to play, we're going through tests really quick now. We had a lot of them that were just sitting there for a long time. But then again, when the rules changed, then we had use for them after they expired, but the state extended that expiration date for us.
So we're
It's
so we
deciding,
rely
yeah.
on,
Who is finalizing that?
I have the same question.
Well, we have the CDC, the Ohio Department of Health, and the Erie County Department of Health. Those,
So are you personally gelling those, or are we gonna now get new guidelines from the state? I'm just confused where those are coming from.
what I would like to do is mainly rely on the county one, and because they all again are very similar. And if you'd like tomorrow, I can email you, all of you, the documents from the county, from the state, and the one CDC link that just gets it. You kind of have a, again, it's confusing for me to present it to you. It's, I'm a visual person. You can all get a sense of what we're looking at, and certainly any input that any of you have would be welcome, because this is communications usually come pretty easily to me. I'm a little befuddled by all this because of the differences in some of the strong opinions that not you guys, but other people out there have told me they have over each individual document. So.
Well, and for us to acknowledge, or I guess realize that Ohio is different because it piloted that test, mask to stay and test to play. So that is more progressive than the federal guidelines. So we're one of a few states that test piloted that, found it was safe and effective for keeping kids in school. So our state guidelines, to my understanding, the ones I saw, that is only for the school setting, and dealing with positives and quarantines in the school, with the idea of keeping the kids in school, allowing them to participate in athletics. So the CDC guidelines are kind of
I understand all that.
thing.
Really, what I'm asking is,
Right.
is it you personally coming out with this final document? Is it the superintendents as a collective in the area? I'm just wondering, when you're referring to this document that and the presentation of it.
Well, ultimately, yes,
on
it'll
you?
be what, but I'm not doing it by myself. But yes, I'll be responsible for when it comes out and what it looks like. Yeah, the only example I've got so far, I have one from EHOBE that they sent me, where they kind of did the same thing. They decided to format in their own regard. I believe through the county now, if I remember right, I believe Sandusky is more CDC oriented, if that makes sense in terms of where they're getting their guidance from. They had said that they're using CDC information. So I hope they answered your question. Not yet, because we had a pretty good stock of tests, and then they extended the deadline. Then we got more that Julie ordered, so that was good. And we went through those quickly, and then I got a letter from the health department today. They had, I think they had 2 boxes per district, so I went over and picked up 2 boxes from the health department. And those particular tests, there's 2 tests per box, where the other ones we were given is 1. So I think the reasoning is that if you test positive, then you don't have to go find another test to test back or something. So now that we had a big girls basketball game with Oak Harbor postponed, we're getting now back into we're rolling our sports again. So I anticipate these tests will be going quick, and they're not just for athletics. It's for staff, students, family, kids in school, extracurriculars, so I think they'll be going pretty quick. Now, Pete Shea did tell me today at the health department that he's got to get rid of what he has before they'll send him more. So there must be, I think they're a little judicious at the state about how they're sending them out. There was a time you couldn't give them away to people, but now with the new testing to play in some of the other things, they've become a hot commodity.
The library just put out a post that they're going to be having a new supply. Was it today or I think it's this week?
They did, and then they
You have
went
to-
through today, but somebody else said they're holding reserve, like they're only doing an allocation for each day, so it was gone
Okay.
really quickly,
Yeah, 'cause
and
you
that
have
they'll
to-
have.
You have to register for one. You can't just walk in and ask
Yeah.
for one. You have to register. But they did get a new supply. They were out. Treasurer's report.
My report, I'll begin with the financial audit for fiscal year 21. I received notice from Julian and Group. Are all done. I had a few paperwork that are actually going to send it to the auditor state for review. So once that happens, it will be released to the public. There's no citations, so it was a really clean audit. So they did very well. Let's see. If you notice my treasurer's report, I had monthly financial statements and donations. This is only the 4th of January. I have nothing for you. But I did want to talk about item C, and Mrs. Hartley was so kind to call me and said, maybe we should mention it. On item C, I'm asking for legal counsel for complaints against property. Well, there happens to be a House Bill 126 that was passed the Ohio Senate on December 15th. And where a school district could lodge a complaint against a property owner that's trying to lower the valuation of their property, we could do a complaint against that. This particular bill does not let school districts do it, and it completely prohibits it. So the version that is in the Senate. The House doesn't come back until January 19th of this month. So if you have any letter writing abilities, you might want to contact your representative and tell them that this is not a good thing for schools. I'll give you an example. This past summer we had, and you have to understand, most school districts only go after businesses. They really don't go after residential, or they have a threshold of maybe 50,000 because otherwise it's not economical to do that. But just this past summer we had one that they were trying to devalue the property by $2.6 million, and that meant $15,000 for our district. Luckily, because we lodged the complaint, they withdrew their appeal or their application, and so that didn't affect us. But if we don't have that ability to do that, there could be possible, consequences for our district that we can't, these complaints or these people that are trying to lower their valuation when maybe in fact they shouldn't be lowered.
Originated in the House, was passed there, went to the Senate, was passed there, so now it goes back to the House for the amendments, and then once they pass it and it goes for the vote, it goes to the governor's desk.
So we just need a motion to accept Betty's recommendations, which weren't really right.
The treasurers, I will send you, once I have all my treasurer reports done, I'll email them to you, but they'll certainly be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Item C is kind of the cart before the horse, but depending on what happens, we may not need it, but if it doesn't pass, then we definitely need this.
So we're just looking for a motion for item C.
Second.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mrs. Henners? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Ruff, for superintendent recommendations. I don't see
No
any.
recommendations on here due to the proximity of our last meeting, so we can go right
Okay.
to school.
And then we'll go to school volunteers.
And we just have one volunteer, Brittany Chanel, to be approved as a volunteer.
Okay. Any discussion or questions? Okay.
Dr. LeFay?
Yes.
Mrs. Henners? Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Board committee reports. Is there anything that you'd like to report upon?
I sent everybody a kind of a list that I redid just because I found in the last couple of years that, to me, the liaison and the reporting wasn't effective. It was, so many of them were never discussed. I don't think it's not anybody's fault here. I'm not saying that, but so I was trying to come up with some more meaningful. But by the way, I think hopefully will become actual committees, and a lot of this is because of our chore that we will need to be looking at things to reduce. So, which is why I, like in my sheet that I handed out to you, I have copies if you didn't bring them, if you want to talk more about them. That's why I put athletics on here, because I truly believe that is something that needs to become more active with our participation to find out the operating them and what the costs really are. So that's different. With the help of Ms. McDonald, she suggests we change the curriculum to include instruction and professional development, call it teaching and learning. Policies, I suggested keeping the same because that's effective. Finance and audit, and then operations and facilities, which, again, we all know that's probably going to be very high up.
Almost in the situation we're in now, separate and have operations and facilities.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
I know it reads that way, but I mean, an operations liaison and a facilities liaison.
and as I
John,
put
do you
in
mind
my,
passing those down
Sure.
if you're using that
Yeah, I
newer
can
list?
just,
I think that'd be helpful.
as I put in my as I put in my email, it obviously was all for discussion. It was just I was trying to come up with something as a starting point, and not to beat it up, but just, and I split it up into real committees, then community representatives, and then OSBA. Again, however we want to reflect it is up to us. And again, I included, I put safety and security. I've been that person. I've never been invited or attended any safety or security. So I would like to see that become more active in my brand. I even had positions on here at one time I took off. I mean, again, because I don't know of what goes on operationally, like to me, it should be our resource officer, operations director, at least one school board member, could be a faculty member. I mean, I would like really love to see more participation and more input from the people that are doing the job, rather than just us put a name on next to safety and security and say, well, hope somebody calls me. You know, so
I understand what you're saying.
this was my rationale, troublemaker that I can be. Then again, I went to the community reps. I didn't realize actually that we not only provide somebody as a board member, but we also name the 2 community members, which I have never heard any. I mean, I'm assuming over the last couple of years, it's the same 2 people.
No, there was,
Since I've been here, I'm talking about.
yeah, since you've been here, but we did appoint, Julie Spitzley, probably before you were here, but that was the board's duty because, I'm trying to think who resigned from Parks and Rec. Mr. Hahn. Could have been Mr. Hahn or someone else, but we did have to appoint someone, so that was brought before the board and we had to approve her.
And I guess it could be if something we want to visit. I don't know. I just put it on there again as a matter of information. And then obviously we supply a board member, Hovey. You're an education fund, and economic development is. I don't really know what the status of it is, other than when I talked to the city manager, he made it sound like it was going to be disbanded. I don't know why. Not my choice. It's not our committee, but it's still. It's still there because I did look last week. It's still listed. So we need to come up with somebody for that, and then OSBA, 2 things, and then I just put the last year's committees and who did what, just for point of reference. So that was, you know, I don't know if I've left something out or somebody wants to add or.
I have to agree with Mr. Ruff in that operations and facilities could be two separate committees. Because as everyone has agreed, coming up, we have a lot of work to do as far as facilities and operations. And so I think those could be two separate headers. Safety and security obviously could be one. But I do agree separating operations and facilities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we kind of have a facilities committee with the OFCC report. That committee has been formed.
Right.
So that would fit under facilities. I would think that committee kind of has already been established.
And I think the operations is more of a board liaison that takes a direct look on what's going on now in the day-to-day. You know, the facilities thing, we're looking into the future. But how are, you know, like we talked earlier, I think it was Mrs. Hinner's question about, like, where are our subs going? And, you know, our operationally, we're suffering a little bit because of, you know, plugging holes. I think that's a great place for a.
And would that be someone who would then meet with Denise Zilski? She's our director of operations, so that would be someone who would have direct communication with Denise and work with her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Much like teaching and learning would have a lot with.
Right.
with Dr. McDonald.
Right. Okay.
I just thought this would be clearer than our usual list of just.
I think this is very nice because there are some, you know, the community representatives, Joint Recreation District and Economic Development, those used to be a voting member on those things. So that's very different than just being on a committee. So I appreciate the, you know, breaking down of what things are. I think that's great. Do anyone else have any thoughts?
Just questions, because this is all new to me. What would policies entail? Who would that necessarily be a meeting with, or time commitment wise?
From OSBA, and what they do is when there's updated board policies based on state law, they send us the policy. We actually keep them in a folder, and then I think we meet quarterly, and and we actually go through each policy to get it ready for board adoption.
So would that be different from shouldn't it kind of be the legislative liaison for?
That's different. That's
Okay.
totally different. Yeah, OSBA is Ohio School Board Association, and the person that would represent OSBA, they actually would go to the school board annual meeting. They would actually be the representative for us at a voting meeting. So that's a totally different representative.
Yeah, policies is just updating our.
From OSBA.
Oh, like, well, it's
From
not
the
all the
state,
time. Like,
yeah.
for instance,
From-
we are
yeah.
hopefully working or starting to work on this naming of buildings or facilities or.
But eventually that'll come from, you know, we'll look at policies, but that'll come from
Right.
OSBA. We'll ask them for a policy, but, you know, you can decide and change it. Most of the stuff you get is, at least the time I did it, it's just pretty straightforward things, but there's always changes.
And it's not, it would be a treasurer and city, or
That's with.
Yeah, that's just our treasurer.
That's just with our treasurer.
The finance committee for the city, our treasurer sits on that committee.
I'm new to this.
No.
I think, yeah, so John, is your grouping kind of the top row is really just district specific ones? This
Well-
next group is ones where there's some outside entity, whether it's a city or the education foundation where we have a representative, we appoint somebody.
That's how I split it up, because the list, as you see down below, is just
Okay,
this conglomeration of, you know, names and then
yeah.
board members. It's like it looks a little.
And then athletics, my understanding is currently they don't really meet with anyone. Would that potentially be the
Like I said,
boosters
The
or?
boosters. When I was on the boosters, Paul Ward did attend our meetings, almost all of them, which
Okay.
was extremely helpful to our booster group to have a board member there. Extremely helpful, especially you know, I don't want to off too far on a tangent, but for a long time in the district, the athletic boosters really moved kind of ahead of the board, and the board was, in my opinion, too reliant on the boosters for all the things they were doing. The board was, and I work for these people, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but the boosters were so effective, the board was able to pass on a lot of board responsibilities for facilities that really weren't booster responsibilities. Part of that's the reason why our track's in the condition it's in now. Because the boosters, when certain, money sources ran dry, the boosters didn't have the kind of funding they did in the first 10 years of this century. They were making a lot of money off of the RIP tickets, bingo, and then the partnership with Kalahari. So it's really important to have, I thought, as a booster member, to have an active board member.
If we want to, do we have to have a motion to accept this new form, or we can just adopt it?
We need to appoint our Yehovah person, though.
That one does need.
I would volunteer myself for that.
Anyone else interested in the EHOV?
I would be.
I don't know when EHOV meets.
They
And
meet
that's,
during the day.
oh, I withdraw my.
Okay, wow.
They meet during the day, and I had, a discussion that I had with Chris McCauley. My thought was it would be easier for now for one of our veteran board members, just because they meet during the day. That was the big thing, and they have a very veteran board over there. Good group of people. Not for me to decide.
Anyone else? So Beth, you're
I
withdrawing?
am withdrawing
Okay.
formally, yes.
Anyone else?
Unfortunately.
Okay, EHOV?
Yeah,
So
that's
we
it. I would be,
have to-
I would be very happy to represent us there.
Okay. We need to decide joint recreation. Oh, before we go on to joint recreation? Okay, all right, I need a motion to approve, Mr. Jones for the EHOV representative.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Henners? Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Lefay? Mrs. Nance? Yes. Okay. Then can we decide the joint recreation district? That meets in the evening.
I can do that.
It meets, is it the, William, is it the first Tuesday of every month joint rec meets at 6:30? I'm pretty sure it's the first Tuesday of every month at 6:30. And they meet at the city building. Anyone else interested in joint recreation? Well, that's the thing. If we're gonna do first and third, then every first, someone's going to be out for joint
Right,
rec.
that's why we.
Yeah.
Probably good that we're doing this and then revisit the calendar, give that, a little bit of thought.
Motion to approve Dr. Lefay for the Huron Joint Recreation.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Henners? Yes. Dr. Lefay? Mrs. Nance?
Okay. All right, and then the rest we're going to figure out amongst ourselves. Is that correct? Okay. Motion to move into executive session to discuss employment, correct? And then there may be action after
Moved?
Second.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. LaFay?
Yes.
Mrs. Henners? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Mann?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
Sure. Should be long. Does anybody want water?
No, thank you.
Okay, let me know.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald.
Eddie, we left executive session at 8:24 p.m. And just for reference, we felt it would be beneficial for us to discuss if, you know, who we want to use, what firm,
Superintendent
for
search.
superintendent search in a public forum and not an executive session, just to continue transparency. So, oh, thank you.
When you, I'm thinking of posting dates. Are you wanting to discuss that now or at another meeting? Only because of the number of superintendent openings out there.
Right.
Posting soon would be very advisable.
I think yes, we do want to post as soon as we possibly can. Absolutely. But do we need to decide where and who we want to use, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if well, for example, again, I got to go from North Point. If you're using them, North Point, then they get everything together for you. And if the other firms, they're the ones you have to let them know what you want in terms of when you want it up and how long you want it up for.
I did ask Mr. Jones to give us the form he put together earlier last year that had all of the people we interviewed as far as superintendent search companies, their costs. Some of them had gold, silver, bronze, platinum, and so we have that, and I can pass that down so everyone can see it. That'd be great. Thank you.
I just pulled it up on
So I guess what we started to talk about is North Point does not have a cost associated with them, and then the other three do, and we'll be able to talk about like in just a few minutes when it's in front of our faces. But does it warrant the extra cost? The last hires have come from North Point, is my understanding. I don't know the history as well as maybe some of you.
I don't know the history of Denny. I don't know that
Denny
history.
was the North Point search.
Okay. Yeah, that I did not know.
So what would be the justification for spending the money on another firm, no matter what that dollar amount was? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think when we did the interviews, I think just the ability, like we talked about, being able to cast a very, very wide net with some of the firms that would have costs associated with them, not just local. And I believe North Point, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I believe North Point said they maybe go as far as Michigan and Pennsylvania, or
Well, when we post, we post on the state, and we've had applicants from Pennsylvania. I think there was a treasurer all the way from Colorado. We had some from West Virginia, one from Michigan. I know I can speak from the North Point of view. Our net is cast much wider in a superintendent search than a treasurer search, only because we just know a lot more educators throughout the state in terms of people that are superintendents, aspiring superintendents, assistant superintendents. So we've done the bulk of our stuff net wise as superintendents.
We're waiting for costs to come back, but I think because Jody, somebody at one of the prior meetings, had even suggested maybe considering doing the search on our own.
I did.
And the city, I know, did that very successfully by creating a search committee that had maybe 2 council people and then community members in there. And I think they were really happy with how that process ran. We had people on the committee that had a lot of experience doing some high-level searches for their own organizations. So that was another way, and obviously saves cost in there, but is more going to be more labor intensive.
I can also throw out kind of in favor of engaging a search firm is timing, right? Like we don't have, time is not a luxury we have a lot of to conduct this process for all sorts of reasons, right? But, you know, up to and including if an objective is to try and get firms just going to be able to, they're not going to have to convene much quicker because this isn't their first rodeo, as opposed to if you try to do it organically for the wonder, especially with the treasurer search going on too, if we have the
Sure.
to do it right now. And the amounts of money I'm seeing, like in the corporate world, when you do like a headhunter search, usually you're talking to 25%, 25 to 33% of the base salary is the cost of the search. So I mean, we're like around compared to corporate headhunters or recruiters.
That's one thing that struck me from sitting through all the PowerPoint presentations of the companies was they all stood up and said the same thing. They're like, well, we would come in, get to know your community, you know, and I feel like North Point is in our community. So is that an advantage? I'm just throwing it out there. Or is it too incestuous, I guess, if you will?
Pros and cons, right? I mean, I think I won't adopt the word, but I'm with you on the, do you, if what we're looking to do is to maybe do something different and cast a wider net, do you go with a different perspective?
OSBA, kind of a compromise there, where it's somebody who's got such tight connections with the districts in the state, very active service provider. The cost is, you know, half of what the other ones are, but maybe just to try something different. If we've used North Point for executive searches for years, something different to try.
One thing, and I think I brought this up before, but just as a caution, and this might sound like North Point bias, but it is true. With the search firms like K-12 and Finding Leaders, now remember, they make money. They might find us, somebody, but then if another job opens up in a year or two, they're calling, because that's kind of what they did with Randy, to say, hey, there's a bigger district that we think you'd be a good fit for. So they're who they find, they might keep looking.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's common, and I think that's something to look for, and I think you can see that in a person's resume. That was really common in the field that I worked in for 20 years because it was kind of a specialty, and there aren't that many people who do it. So a headhunter gets attached to you. They're calling you every 24 months to see if you're movable and if they can plug you into another opening that they have, and there are people who were. So I think there's ways of kind of sussing that out in the process. We get candidates who might look like that.
I personally will throw my 2 cents in, and I'd like to try something different. I would. I just point, but I would just like to try something different, and that's just my 2 cents.
I think I need to find out what ancillary costs are involved. Because at the time I wrote that in there, all I was looking at was dollars. So, I mean, OSBA becomes a little bit higher if you look at some additional costs.
They're essentially equivocal. It looks like.
Really?
If
Yeah,
you're
I
including
guess
the
that's kind of my
ancillary
point.
costs there, yeah.
And I got echo what Mrs. Mass said, that I don't think it would be when you look at the cost, even with the ancillary, we're talking about $10,000. I'm not trying to take that lightly, but the scope may bring us a lot of different names, a lot of
Sure.
other people, because even though SBA is an Ohio-based organization, you know nationally they're in the picture too. You know, and I think this is another Terry Moore. I think Terry Morgan is probably involved in searches. Yep, there she
She's
is.
the one that came to
She's
present.
the one that
Yeah.
came and presented, yeah.
And I have a lot of faith in her. So I would not hesitate suggesting that we use OSBA. It's very it's just the importance of this particular pick. Or we do what we've done before. If we want to take time, we have North Point and see what candidates come across, and if we're
The problem with that is the timing, because if you use North Point, you know, you typically post for 6 to 8 weeks.
okay,
And if we did that and you didn't like your selection, now you're really
now we're
behind
behind the 8 ball. Okay,
in the,
Good
in the
point.
process.
One shot to do it
Can you
well.
do them simultaneously? Can you hire two firms at the same time? Can you hire North Point and OSBA? But I'm just saying, North Point has no cost. OSBA does have a cost. Can you engage two search firms at the same time? I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing that out
Yeah,
there.
It might be administratively get a little bit messy.
Because I don't know how much they
Yeah,
intertwine.
I don't know, and that would be something I would have to run past Doug to see if he'd be willing to do that. We've never been asked to do that in the 9 years I've been there.
I just
I
wondered.
don't, yeah.
if people
that's a
cross
good
post,
question, but
you know?
I don't have a good answer.
Mhm.
Right, because you want the experience. Because I mean, part of this is the experience for us, but
Right.
part of it's the experience for the candidate.
Correct.
Right, and
Right.
and I mean, we're selling here in
Mhm.
city schools as much
Mhm.
as they're selling, they're being a good fit for it.
Mhm.
So I mean, as a candidate, I wouldn't want like the same job being posted by, you know what I mean? Because like, where to whom do I apply?
Sure.
Like, are
Sure.
there different? And if,
Sure.
if one's a higher quality process than
Mhm.
another, are different candidates having different experiences?
Yeah. Okay. I understand. I just thought.
It's a good
Throwing it out
question,
there.
especially
I
because
don't
it's two nonprofits.
When I heard these presentations, I didn't really, there wasn't a lot of discernment between them. I would say their PowerPoints were really kind of echoing one another's unintentionally. And I'm just wondering what's jumping out about OSBA to you guys. Is it the base cost? Is it because you're familiar with the lady who presented? You know, can you?
And I guess I was echoing more of what Mrs. Matt said about it is the lowest cost one.
It is, but if you add in the ancillary costs, they're all
They're right. Yeah, you're
Pretty
right. And that's
equivocal.
what I'm looking at. The ancillary costs are printing and mailing of brochures, if we choose that. Consultant travel expenses from Columbus, or I don't know. We can always Zoom, right? I mean, finalist travel expenses for second round interviews, national advertising if we request it, and focus group meetings, $1,600 a day.
presented that you were familiar with.
Terry
whether-
Morgan.
I guess I'm asking. You were like you made the comment. If she's involved, I trust her. I think she's great.
I have forged a very good relationship with her over the last 2 years. As far as if I have a question that, could be really far out, I kind of run it by her first before I move forward. Or she's just been very helpful.
Terry has been very helpful with issues with questions about school board. She came in and did a boardmanship workshop for us that I felt was very well received by all the board members that were here. And I've talked with Terry several times, and she's been very helpful on situations where I'm not sure what the answer is or where to even go for the answer.
Sure.
And she's directed me either to the right person or had the answer. So I but that has nothing to do with her ability or OSB's ability to perform a wonderful superintendent search for us. It's just there's a relationship there, there's a familiarity with OSBA and with our representative for OSBA. I guess K-12, I didn't like their presentation at all. I thought it was horrible. And Finding Leaders was good, but Finding Leaders, I think, in OSBA's presentations were pretty similar. So, yeah.
I guess if we're thinking about casting the net wider, which it sounds like we're kind of leaning toward, and we're looking at these these three, having some familiarity with the point of contact, I don't think is a negative thing. And to me, all the presentations were very similar, and I think if that is something that can help delineate it, and the base cost is lower, then maybe we have an answer there. If anyone has any further thoughts or reservations?
When the question comes up about cost, I think you say to the community, we had 2 searches, right? You went with North Point for the treasure search, right? And, this one, maybe we're willing to make a different investment. We kind of split the difference where we thought a little extra money might make it.
Yeah, I don't think that many people in the community would argue the justification for these dollars.
Especially for a position that's important.
Are we ready to make a
Sounds like
decision?
it.
I need a motion to. Are we doing a motion to hire? What's our to hire OSBA as our superintendent search firm? Okay, I need a motion to hire OSBA as our superintendent search firm.
Second.
Ready? Sorry.
Mrs. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. LeFay? Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Are you comfortable contacting Terry Morgan and just telling her that's what we've decided to do? That would be wonderful.
So I'll see how she wants to, if she wants everybody's
Right.
emails directly or how she wants
How she wants
do
to
that.
proceed.
And also, do you want this thing posted ASAP?
Do we want a chance to look at the post? I mean,
Definitely.
I'll
The
ask the
job
question.
description.
The posting generally like
Well, she would give us a draft, correct?
Yeah, but at least
but we
what we
can-
always did at North Front is
Yeah.
before we posted it, whoever wants something posted, we send them the posting. It's usually pretty, they're all similar. Probably we get a job description attached to it, but yeah, we can do all that. So
I need a motion to adjourn. Oh, is that it? Do we have?
This says next meeting on it. Or am I looking at the wrong thing here? Oh, I'm looking at the right thing. Yeah, this says January 4th on what I'm looking at.
No, that's the heading on that thing.
Oh, sorry.
That's how the software
Oh,
generates
so
that.
we are,
You know what?
so, okay.
We didn't
Wait a
do
minute.
any new business. We didn't do anything under new business, but do we need to do that? Does anyone have any new business they need to bring before the board?
No, but we are gonna have, I guess I'm a little confused.
If we are having a meeting on the 18th or
I
not,
mean, we talked about it.
yeah, we're
Kind
gonna
of,
call
but
it to
not-
schedule. Your
plan a
interviews are a
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
have to have
Like
a
you said,
meeting.
last year we didn't have a meeting after the organizational.
So I think what we decided is we are going to have the interviews in
Yeah.
an executive session. If there was any business that needed to be brought before the board on January 18th, it may be very minimal, but we would bring it before the board and have a meeting. And
Yeah,
then-
and one thing I can
Yeah.
think of that we probably have to vote on is the calendar for the next 2 years.
You expect to have it back by then?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think the teachers
Okay,
have
good.
the results and it's all,
Well, then the timing is going to be different, because we discussed having interviews at 5 and 6:30.
Right.
So when, what do you
So we'll,
advertise as the board meeting?
maybe we'll start at 4:30.
Yeah,
Okay. What,
that's
okay.
why I was confused. I'm thinking, wait, a minute, we
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have it all
Okay.
straightened out.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
still thinking dinner. Dinner.
So, motion to adjourn? So moved.
Mrs. Sinners? Yes. Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartley?
Yes.
Dr. McKay?
Yes.
Mrs. Mass?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks, Betty.
Be expecting a lot of emails about, confirmation of dates and requests, just
Yeah.
keep checking.
I just got her.
I'll keep sending.
Okay,
it
no
for
problem. I
you
just,
guys,
Yes, that's
private
February.
and
I knew